ball when it bounces, the sound that it makes, the smell of a basketball. Then I love it. Absolutely love it.
Welcome to All Ball with Ezekiel, the show where we bring you NBA basketball through the lens of the average Nigerian. Today we'll be talking about who the best player alive is. Is it Giannis? Is it Jokić? We'll dive right into all of that and also look at compelling reasons for both of them. So you guys know how we do it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe if you enjoy what we do. Follow us on IG at allball.ng to stay connected with all that's going on the channel. And with that, let's get right into it. The title of best player in the world is quite a coveted one. And interestingly enough, it has only been held by a handful of people. Right, if we're going to list them, we'll start with maybe George Mikan. Then we have Bill Russell, we have Will Chamberlain. Then after Will Chamberlain, it was Dr. J during the NBA merger, although Dr. J came from the ABA. After Dr. J, of course, it was sort of shared in the 80s between Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. And of course, Michael Jordan comes next, and he just straight out dominated the entire 90s. Now, after Michael left, it was Shaq, then it was Kobe for a quick stint, and then after Kobe, LeBron came in, and LeBron held it down for over 10 years. And now we're in a spot where it is a toss-up once again. So it really was LeBron started to lose till, we all saw that drop off from Bron after the 2020 season. And then of course, there was the KD foot on the line against the Bucks, Game 7, took them all the way in 2021 playoff series. And at that time, KD, the way that he fought to keep that Nets team alive, his efforts, even I was like, oh no, this is the guy. Of course, people like Skip Bayless were having the time of their lives with LeBron not being the best player. But I mean, that only lasted so long because in that same playoff run, Giannis ended up closing out the NBA Finals with a 50-point game in Game 6, coming back from, and of course, the way he did it was so poetic because he had an injury in the conference finals. So he started off the NBA Finals just coming off an injury that people thought would sideline him, possibly even to the next season, right? But then he makes a miraculous comeback. He averages about 35 and 10 throughout the entire finals run. And of course, Giannis is giving best player alive privileges. But that only lasts so long because even Giannis himself is then eliminated in the next year playoffs against the Boston Celtics in Game 7. I remember watching that playoff series and just thinking to myself, imagine if they had Chris Middleton, maybe it would have been a different story, maybe Giannis have multiple championships. But then again, injuries are a part of the game. So Giannis goes on to lose in second round of the next playoff series. But then he does so in a way where you can't really say he still isn't the best player alive because he puts up a valiant effort, but he's just outdone by a better team. Then, of course, that same season, Curry goes on to beat the team that beats Giannis, right? And everybody's like, okay, this definitely changes Curry's legacy. Is Curry a top 10 player? So all the conversations are around Steph Curry just based on how the fact that now he had won a championship without Kevin Durant and he finally got that finals MVP that many people had ridiculed him for not having. So the conversations were around Curry. But while this was happening, bear in mind, Jokić was winning the MVPs. So people are like, okay, there's Giannis. Giannis has lost now, so can we really say he's the best player since he's not dominating? But by dominating, obviously, it means he's not just winning championship after championship. Because if you're going to be the best player alive, you need to win championships, right? If you look at Michael Jordan, you look at Magic Johnson, you look at Kobe Bryant, you look at Shaquille O'Neal, look at even LeBron James. You have to have multiple championships. You can't just be a local champion, just stats pack, just like you're having all the stats. There have to be some championships, some awards to back up. And of course, while Curry was winning, while Giannis won, Jokić was bagging the MVPs and making a case that, okay, you guys are winning, but just hear me out. And of course, he comes on the scene and then he eventually wins the championship. And when he does so, it's like, okay, no, this guy is the guy. And so this now brings us into the conversation around Nikola Jokić. Nikola Jokić had his breakout season, I would argue, in 2020 in the bubble when the Denver Nuggets upset the Clippers, right? Because that year, everybody thought this was the Clippers year. I mean, they started off the year with an ad taunting the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, at that time, they were sharing the same building before now that, Steve Ballmer has built their own. But then they were sharing the same building and started off, Kawhi was like, well, this is Kawhi town. And even the NBA odds makers were putting the Clippers as the best team in the NBA. We were all looking towards that, Lakers-Clippers matchup in the Western Conference Finals. Only for Jokić to be like, hold on, let's calm our horses. And then they go on to come back from, I think they came back from about 3-0 or 3-1. Anyway, 3-1. They came up from 3-1 to defeat the Los Angeles Clippers. And it was at that time that everybody began to take a notice of Nikola Jokić, because he really went head to head against AD, who was arguably the third, fourth, possibly even second best player alive at that point in time. That was when AD really showed his potential. I mean, AD has been somebody that we all knew could be a great player, but I mean, AD is AD. Right, so Nikola Jokić came on the scene 2020, but of course, they lost in the second round. But then after that year, since then he has gone on to win 3 MVPs and revolutionize the center position. Currently, he's averaging 31, 10, and 13. 31 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists, which is ridiculous for a center if you think about it. Nikola Jokić has proven to be an offense unto himself. If you check the offensive rating when he's on the floor versus when he's off, the gap between him being on the floor and when he's off is literally historic. When Nikola Jokić is on the floor, his team has the best offensive rating ever. Think about that for a second. When he's on the floor, not just, and this is, many people make the argument that it's because of the Denver rotation. They only put Jokić on with all the starters, and it's a plan to boost his analytics and all of that. But if you look at Jokić, let me read out the stat for you guys. When Jokić is on the floor and Aaron Gordon is off, obviously we know that Aaron Gordon is a starter, and not only is he a starter, but he's an important piece of that Denver Nuggets starting five. So Nikola Jokić is on and Aaron Gordon is off. They have a 129 offensive rating. That is literally the best offensive rating ever. When he's on the floor and Jamal Murray is off, obviously we know that Jamal is the starting guard, and he and Jokić have this two-man game that they always use to close out games at the end of tough series or tough matchups. When Nikola is on and Jamal is off, they still have a 122, which would be the best offensive rating for today, right? That is the level of production, that's the level of offense that Nikola gets his team to when he's playing. And what makes it even more ridiculous is he does it in such a seamless way. Like, he makes it look so easy. You're almost like, is this real? Is he really playing against NBA level competition? Because he's not, obviously if you look at Nikola Jokić, if you put him in normal street clothes, you would never guess that he's as good as what he looks like. He literally is a historically great player. People are arguing that his peak, which is right now, is higher than that of players like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. And of course, when conversations like that started to go around, it was almost like, okay, guys, let's hold our horses. But then you look at it again and you're like, okay, he has 3 MVPs. That's literally Kevin Durant and Steph Curry combined. KD has 1, Steph has 2. If you look at the level of the offense when Nikola is on the floor playing, it is higher. The offensive rating is higher than Steph, higher than Kevin Durant. Now, of course, his points per game are not so high, because we know that Jokić, even though Denver runs the offense through Jokić, he's not constantly just getting up shots all the time. Right? And it's one of the arguments that I made for LeBron being just as good a scorer as Michael Jordan. Because if you look at the amount of shot attempts per game, and you compare that with compare Michael Jordan's shot attempts with LeBron's shot attempts, you can sort of see why the point differential is what it is. Because when you look at the efficiency, Nikola is averaging 31 points on 65% true shooting, which is ridiculous. People say that, okay, he's a center, but even from the mid-range, he's efficient. Even from 3, he's efficient. And what is scary is that last year, he was more efficient from 2. This year, so he was more efficient from 3 rather. This year, he's still efficient, but he's not as efficient as last year. And we know that he can hit that mark just based on how the level that he reaches and level that he was able to reach in the past. And if you've watched Jokić play, you can tell that he definitely has great touch around the rim, great touch. As a Laker fan, watching him play against the Lakers back-to-back years, hitting ridiculous shots. The Lakers will play great defense for 23 and a half seconds. And then as the clock is running down, Jokić just hits one nonsense, one leg fadeaway 3, and goes in to win the game. So that's Nikola Jokić. Now let's talk about Giannis. Giannis is, what's interesting? one of the prominent narratives about Giannis is that this guy can't shoot. He can't shoot, can't score. His offense is limited. This is that. There has been a whole knock on Giannis about his level of production, not about level of production, about his skill set offensively. What is absolutely ridiculous is, alongside all of that narrative, Giannis last year was second in the league in scoring. This season, he's leading the entire league in scoring. The season before that, for the past 5 seasons, Giannis has been top 5 in scoring. And this is somebody who they say, oh, is limited on offense, he can't score, he can't do this. Now, are there some truths to the statements? Definitely. Giannis' shooting percentage in terms of his free throws have always been abysmal. I mean, currently he's still in the 60th percentage in shooting, in his free throw percentage. What am I saying? His free throw percentage is still in the 60%, 60 to 70 range, right? It varies, sometimes it's 65, 63. But we know that Giannis has never been a good free throw shooter. That we must concede, right? Another thing is, in terms of shooting threes, Giannis has never been a great 3-point shooter. But I think what people get confused is the fact that he's not a good 3-point shooter doesn't mean he's not a great scorer. I saw a stat the other day. Giannis has more 30-point games in the last decade than any other player alive. Now keep in mind, the last decade, that takes us back all the way to January. Right now, this is January 2025. 10 years ago would be January 2015. Now keep in mind, January 2015, Steph Curry had already begun balling. He was at the peak of his prime in 2015. Obviously, there was LeBron James, there was James Harden. There have been so many great players. There's Russell Westbrook, there's, Kyrie Irving, so many great players, Kevin Durant. Yet, Giannis, the flawed offensive player who can't shoot, can't make free throws, has the most 30-point games. Now, how does that happen? This just shows how dominant Giannis is around the rim. Giannis is like a modern day Shaquille O'Neal. We know that, yes, he's one of the most athletic players in the league today. But when you're looking at scoring, not the artistic nature of scoring, but scoring from the perspective of just pure production, you cannot deny that Giannis is a great scorer. In fact, Giannis is an all-time scorer, right? Because he's averaging 30 points per game on 65% shooting. No other player this season, this 2025 season, he broke the record for the most consecutive 20-point games with over 50% field goal percentage during those games, which is absolutely ridiculous to think about it. Giannis right now is playing his absolute best basketball. He's averaging 32, 11, and 6 on 61% shooting. That's how great Giannis is playing. Giannis has a 2-way impact unlike any other player in the league. I mean, just in his game against Wemby, we saw him lock down Wembanyama. I mean, Wemby almost looked like he couldn't score every time Giannis was on him. Now, how many players averaging 30 plus points in the league currently can also lock down a generational talent like Wembanyama? Right, so when we look at Giannis's production on offense and his level of defensive impact, I mean, you cannot deny that that 2-way impact is unlike any other. He right now is making a case for Defensive Player of the Year with the amount of defense that he's playing on the Milwaukee Bucks. It is no secret that from last season, one of the major struggles that the Milwaukee Bucks have had has been on the defensive side of things. We know that they were always scoring, but they could not guard nobody for nothing. But this season, we can see that their defense has taken an uptick. And we have Giannis. Obviously, it's not a one-man job, right? I mean, Giannis is playing good defense, Brook Lopez is playing good defense, Gary Trent Jr. is playing good defense. Even Dame is really showing lots of effort on the defensive side. But all of that is tied around Giannis playing that help side defense, switching to anybody 1 through 5. You cannot deny that Giannis is having a phenomenal defensive impact, really legit making a case for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he had another block similar to the one at the NBA Finals against the Suns, where he covered the pick and roll ball handler and then switched onto the center and then stopped the alley-oop. I mean, how many players can make that kind of adjustment in game? Probably only him and maybe Anthony Davis, but you cannot even compare their level of offensive impact because AD is always up and down. So when you look at the case for Giannis, and you look at Giannis is the only player. I saw his stat. Let me read it to you. Giannis is the only player in NBA history to average at least 25 points per game, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, and 1 steal in multiple seasons. He's literally using records to set the record straight on his level of production and where he stands all time. So when you take all of that together and you compare that with Nikola Jokić, what you have is literally a toss-up on who's the better player. Many people say that because of what Jokić does on the offensive end, that he is so important offensively that he makes up for his defensive lapses. Because the truth is, especially with the way the Nuggets are today, where their bench leaves a lot to be desired, the burden on Jokić to create every single offense for that team. I mean, Jokić, literally, I mentioned earlier that the on and off numbers when Jokić is on and off, they literally go from being an offensive juggernaut to being one of the worst teams in the NBA when Jokić is off the floor. And we know that they rely on Jokić to set up all the other players. I mean, he's literally playing well alongside Russell Westbrook. If you know anything about it, not that Russell Westbrook is a difficult teammate per se, but his style of play requires that you cater to him. Many people make the argument that it's easier to build around a great offensive player than it is to build around a great defensive player. And they use that as some of the logic to explain why Jokic's offense is valued more than Giannis's defense. But to me, that argument is not it doesn't properly explain the reality of the situation, because Giannis is not redundant on offense. He's not somebody who's giving you next to nothing on offense, right? He's giving you historic level production on historic level, efficiency, right? So the gap between Jokić and Giannis on offense is not as wide as the gap between Giannis and Jokić on defense. When you put all that together, I personally believe that Giannis is the better player. But I mean, if anybody says Jokić, it's something that it's a conversation to be had, right? It's a conversation to be had. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Who's the better player, Jokić, Giannis? What are your reasons? That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in and supporting All Ball, where basketball meets Nigerian passion. Don't forget to like, subscribe, review, all of that junk. See you guys in the next one. Cheers.